The post is titled, "I am 25M and my family cut contact with me 5 years ago after a fight with my brother. Now, they want me to come back, but I'm having doubts about it. My family pretty much cut all ties with me at the end of 2015. Things had been a bit turbulent for a while, but when I went over to my parents' house for Christmas in 2015, I got very drunk one night and got into an argument with my younger brother, which ended up turning physical. I was 19 at the time, he would have been 15, and he came out of it pretty badly. Without going into massive detail, he had said something which struck a nerve. I won't say what because it's quite personal and not really relevant here, and I ended up injuring him quite badly. There was a question of potentially involving the police, but nothing ever happened in regards to that. In the end, they all just told me they wanted nothing to do with me anymore, which is fair enough. I was completely in the wrong and they were absolutely right to want to cut me off. I'm not complaining about that in the slightest. I had already moved out by that stage, so it wasn't a case of kicking me out, it was more just telling me to never come back. Again, I can't blame them for this at all and would be surprised if you could either. This post isn't about me complaining about being cut off or pretending that I didn't deserve it, because I did, and I'm not trying to play the victim here. I genuinely regret what I did and have spent time trying to self-improve in the wake of it. It was quite difficult for me to come to terms with this for the first year or so afterwards. The only person in my family I had any contact with was my mum. We never really spoke in depth, just small updates, wishing each other happy birthday and things like that. Honestly though, after that first year, things have gotten so much better for me. I stopped drinking, which was the root of a lot of my problems. I got my head down and ended up doing very well at uni. I've now got a job that I love and I've been with my girlfriend for the best part of 4 years and things are absolutely great. To be brutally honest, I don't miss my family. My relationship with them hadn't been great for a while before the fight, and as far as I was concerned, I didn't miss them and they didn't miss me, and being on a non-contact basis with all of them apart from occasional contact with my mum was for the better. However, over the last few months, my mum began messaging me much more frequently and asking more personal questions about my life, my work, my relationship, etc. I thought it was just boredom on her part, but she maintained it for a while and began to introduce the idea of me coming back to visit her at some point, which I always shrugged off. She started to persist with it, and then yesterday it all came to a head when she added me to a WhatsApp group chat with the rest of the family. I was then told how they had all come to a family decision that 5 years was enough, that my brother had found it in his heart to forgive me for what happened, and that they wanted me to come over at some point to catch up on lost time. These are all quotes from what they sent me. I didn't say much, I just said I wanted time to think. I'm quite torn on this now. Part of me feels like I am obliged to go along with it. They cut contact with me because of my own actions, and if my brother's forgiven me and wants to re-establish contact with me, then it's my duty to do so. On the other hand, I feel like since contact was cut, my life improved a lot. My relationship with them had been on a downward slope for a fair bit of time beforehand, and I just haven't found myself missing any of it. That's why I'm asking for advice. Would you say that I'm obliged to go and re-establish contact because it was my fault that contact was cut, or do you think it would be acceptable for me not to do so? User The Last Basilope said, "Personally, I feel like it would be worth at least a few meetups to see how things go. You're a different person now than you were then, and they're likely different people now too. You know you don't need them in your life, but you may find that being around them enhances your life in some way. Or you may find that being around them brings only negative feelings. Just because you give it a try doesn't mean you have to keep them in your life if you don't want to. In my opinion, if you don't, you'll always have a nagging what if feeling." Under this comment, OP said, "That's been one of my main thoughts. I don't want to regret not doing it in 5 or 10 years, just because I don't want to know. I've enjoyed having conversations with my mom, but I've never really seen eye to eye with the others. It's a difficult one." User Good Amoeba 5299 said, "Before the fight, in what ways was your relationship with your family rocky? Not that you have to go into detail or anything, of course. I ask because it sounds like some of their actions or behaviors leading up to the fight weren't of the best nature either. Have they accepted responsibility for their roles in what happened and apologized? Or from their perspective, is this all 100% on you and you're the villain that they are graciously providing another chance to? Also, kudos for pulling yourself out of a bad situation. I know that that's extremely difficult to do." OP said the following in response to this comment, "They were always quite overbearing when I was younger. You could say overprotective or repressive depending on how you looked at it. By the time I was about 15 or 16, they couldn't really stop me from doing things anymore, and I started doing things that went against their values, which caused friction, especially between me and my father. So, for example, they were strong believers in no sex before marriage, then I got caught with a girl when I was 16 and he barely spoke to me for about a month. They do probably see it as a gracious another chance. That's the impression I get from them at least. User RMM035 said, "You're not obligated to re-establish contact with them, but also consider the fact that the last time you had anything to do with them, you were still a child. Teen years are always rocky, obviously more for you than most, but you're not a kid anymore. That doesn't mean you need to rebuild relationships, just that any relationships you do build will be completely different. You also have the option of pulling back at any point. You could try meeting up and seeing how it goes. You could maybe only see them a few times a year. It's not an all or nothing situation. You can work out how involved you'd like to be with them, which includes maintaining the status quo." User Loki said, "As someone who also quit drinking and has a troubled family, I can understand where you're coming from. You're owning your previous actions, but now that things are good, you're wary of bringing in what was obviously a difficult dynamic for you, and you fear this could cause you to backslide. I don't have an answer for you, only some things to consider. Now your parents are fully grown and still the people you knew. Little about them will have changed. Will they enrich your life? Were there any troubling dynamics? Did they build you up or tear you down? Were they fair? Was there a golden child or scapegoat dynamic at play? Even if things were screwed up, that doesn't mean you can't have a relationship because you have changed. You have grown and learned, and hopefully if there was any troubling treatment, you've evolved enough that pressing your old buttons no longer works. Only you can decide if your parents will be a positive or a negative in your life. Your brother, on the other hand, well, he's likely a totally different person because he was only 15. He's still only about 20, and you still grow and change a lot in your 20s, so he's kind of an unknown. If you had things in common before, fandoms, hobbies, that kind of thing, you probably still do, but who he is now is anyone's guess. If I were you, I think I would start by asking for a coffee date with my brother on my own. Somewhere public so he feels safe and it can last for one cup, or all afternoon if you're getting on well. This is the relationship that needs the most healing. You can apologize, explain your actions, and let him know that explaining them doesn't excuse them. Hopefully, you can both get real about what the issues were that caused this and come to some kind of accord. He's also likely to know why your parents want a reconciliation. Perhaps there are things they haven't told you, like ill health. And if he wants a reconciliation. He may not, in which case I suggest you respect his choice and bow out. Let him know your door is open, but the ball is in his court if he ever feels ready. I really feel like your brother is key to this, and how it progresses depends very much on him. I think if things go well, I'd want a few meetings with my brother before bringing my parents back into the mix. If things don't go well with your brother, you can of course have a separate relationship with only your parents. But this will mean they have to choose between you at every family event. Who gets invited to the events, you or your brother? I'd be inclined to bow out of this kind of dynamic, especially as you haven't had a relationship in so long, but maybe you're happy just having dinner with your folks a few times a year. Just some things to mull over and help you decide how to proceed. Under this comment, OP said, "I apologized to my brother over the phone today. He sounded fairly upbeat and it all went well, which I'm happy about. I don't think relationships will ever be back to normal. It's been 5 years, I've moved on and built things for myself. I'm not sure I want them to be back to what normal was then. For now, I'm reluctant to arrange any face-to-face meetings. I want to talk things out thoroughly and give it time before I make a decision. Thank you for sharing this perspective. I'm glad to hear you've been able to stop drinking as well." About 4 days later, OP gave us an update. I wasn't initially planning on doing an update for that post, but the number of responses I got from it was absolutely unprecedented, so I decided it was right of me to do one. I didn't respond to every single comment, but I did read all of them. I greatly appreciate everyone's input, whether it was positive or negative, or telling me to go back or cut contact completely. It was really good to get different takes on the situation because at the time it was a lot to take in and still is in a way. I'll start off by saying that soon after that post was written, I phoned my brother. We talked for a few minutes about how things were going, and then I apologized to him for what happened back in 2015. He didn't specifically say he forgave me, but he was amicable and said that he appreciated me doing it. I'm glad I did it. I know 5.5 years is a long time to have gone without doing it, but that was the first vocal conversation I'd had with him since the family cut contact. He told me that the whole incident hadn't left him with any lasting mental or physical damage, and while I have no way of knowing whether that's completely true, I was glad to hear it. I don't want to make it about myself, but it did also feel like a bit of a weight lifted off my shoulders. In terms of the actual resumption of contact, it won't be happening for now. After a few days of talking to the family as a collective in the group chat, which I have now left, as well as some individual conversations with different members, I told them that I was happy to increase contact with them through messaging, but that as things stand, I didn't think resuming face-to-face contact would be right and that I wasn't going to do it. As I stated in the initial post, I was already having severe doubts about it, and the conversations I had with them pretty much made my mind up for me. I'll list a few examples of it here. Much of the discussion I had with the family was done through a group chat in which I, 25M, was added by my mum, 45F. This group chat also contained my dad, 54M, and my two brothers, 20M and 14M. The group chat was titled Reunion, so it was pretty obvious what their intentions were. The initial language used by them when I was added bothered me. I gave some examples of it in the original post. Things like my mum saying my brother had found it in his heart to forgive me, and them coming to a family decision that 5 years was enough. It made it seem like there was no chance of it being a normal family relationship at all, and that I would always be indebted and subservient to them in some form for that. As I said, I had no issue with being cut off and felt they were pretty justified in doing so, but that doesn't mean I would be prepared to come back and be in a constant state of owing one and likely being made to feel pressured to do things for them because they were oh so kind to find it in their hearts to let me back. This sort of language continued throughout my being in that group chat. Some more examples were being told that I had lots of work to do if we wanted a normal relationship. Notice that they didn't say we. And I was also compared to the prodigal son multiple times by my very religious parents, which just made me think they were doing it for their own spiritual reasons rather than actually being interested in having me back as part of the family. The final nail in the coffin was that when I specifically expressed doubts about it, my dad said, "After all you did to us as a family, we've decided to let you back in," and then pretty much went on to tell me that I should be biting their hands off for the chance to make amends and that I was ungrateful for not doing so. I told them I was backing out of it pretty soon after that. A few of the replies to my original post asked if any of them needed an organ. I initially brushed this off as a joke, but after some of the conversations I had, I genuinely think it's possible that that's true. My girlfriend, 24F, is also a big reason why I was initially having doubts, and a couple of things that were said by my dad completely reinforced these. I 100% know that he would dislike her, not through any fault of her own, but mainly because he has some very old-fashioned views on women, and he's also quite racist. She is only half white, and when I was younger, my dad made it pretty clear that he didn't want me to date outside of my race. In the group chat, he described her as my exotic girlfriend and made a couple of very stereotypical assumptions about her based on her race, which made it pretty clear to me that he still found it wrong and abnormal of me to be with a girl who isn't completely white. If I resumed a somewhat normal father-son relationship with him, I'm almost certain that he'd try to interfere in some way and would, at the very least, encourage me to end things with her. It's not like I've only been seeing her for a month either. We've been together for almost 4 years and have discussed marriage, so she absolutely takes priority over the family. Those are the main reasons behind me choosing not to go down the route of face-to-face contact with the family. There are a few other things too, such as the fact that they seemed awfully interested in grandchildren who didn't even exist, and also that I suspected that it was all my mom's doing and that the rest of the family wasn't that interested. I'm fairly sure she was feeding the others lines. My 14-year-old brother was typing an awful lot like my 45-year-old mum. Let's put it that way. With all these factors combined with my initial doubts about it, I made up my mind that I wasn't going to resume face-to-face contact. I messaged them telling them that while I did appreciate them trying to get me to do so, I just had too many doubts about it to go and start meeting with them face-to-face or going to their house. I did say that they all had my number now and were free to text me at any point if they wanted to talk, and then left the group chat. I know they've all read it because they've all been online since I sent it, but I haven't had a single message from any of them. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure if I ever will. and yet I can't really say I feel that sad about it. I'm glad I've apologized to my brother, and if that's the end of all contact with them, then so be it. It is what it is. My mom was contacting me every day in the months leading up to her deciding I should start seeing the family again. Now it's beginning to seem to me that she was doing so because she wanted me to return to them on my hands and knees, groveling and begging for forgiveness. Things certainly began to turn a bit sour when it became clear that I wasn't going to do that. Perhaps she sees it as the final betrayal and wants nothing more to do with me now. At the end of the day, I'm never going to pretend that they were for a second wrong for cutting contact with me. They did it to protect their 15-year-old son, and I completely understand it. Ultimately, though, I grew up, ended my addiction, and built a life for myself off the back of it without them involved in my life. It's very likely that they still had this image of the 19-year-old who turned completely white when he was told they wanted nothing more to do with him, but that really isn't me anymore. When they initially kicked me out, I felt like I needed them even though we didn't have the greatest relationship. 5 years on from that, I certainly don't think I do anymore. I apologize to anyone who read the initial post and wanted me to go and see them in person again, but this is just how things have turned out. Once again, thank you to everyone for offering support and advice, and I hope that anyone reading this who has their own issues with family and estrangement is able to navigate them and build a relationship back if they so wish. User Numerous Asparagus 87 said, I think you handled the situation better than many would. You owned up to your mistake and apologized, but kept the healthy boundaries you need to continue to do well in life. It sounds like you have a strong support system with your girlfriend and a healthier way of handling life. Best wishes to you. Under this comment, OP said, yeah, I'm honestly pretty happy with how things have panned out. Some people might think that's weird, but I like the way my life is right now, and I didn't want to risk bringing that down. Best wishes to you as well, my friend. User star 1014 flight said, I don't condone what you did to your brother, but honestly, it's good that you're away from your family right now. They're clearly not reconciling out of genuine want, but to probably save face or try and save you from yourself. They probably harbor some degree of guilt over cutting off their 19-year-old son. But with how your life is going and your relationship with your girlfriend and their racist views, it's best you stay away and just continue your life separately. You made the right choice. OP said, thank you. Yeah, I'll never condone it either. It was completely out of order. There are a lot of reasons why I think they might have tried to resume contact with me. It could be spiritual, it could be that their friends told them to, but whatever it is, I don't think it's that they want to have a relationship with me. I think it was the right choice in the end as well. User Mayreem said, in your first post, I got the impression that not only was your family severely toxic, but your drinking problem was partly fueled by them. I'm not surprised you didn't go to see them if I could pick that up out of a few paragraphs. Also, as a biracial woman, it wouldn't be fair to subject your girlfriend to your very racist, sexist dad when she is so deep in your relationship with no prior understanding that she would have to interact with him. I'm happy to hear you thinking of her in all of this mess too. One more thing, good for you on getting your closure, but ultimately this situation seems just as toxic as before. Any recovering addict could end up relapsing because of this. Not a risk I would take if I were you. Regardless, this is your business and you made the best decision for you, and that's all that matters.